Welcome everyone to this webinar co-hosted by 3Forge and Chronicle. I'm Sarah Malinovsky, the marketing manager at 3Forge. I'm just going to give you a brief introduction to our two panelists and an outline of today's event. Firstly, let me introduce Robert Cook, founder and principal architect at 3Forge. Robert founded 3Forge in 2012. 3Forge is a high-performance platform used by developers to build enterprise applications through a web-based platform, AMI. Today, AMI is deployed at 3 of the 5 largest global banks, and nearly 20% of US equity flows through the platform. 3Forge also provides its services to hedge funds, broker-dealers, and other financial services firms. Before starting 3Forge, Robert served in senior-level positions at JP Morgan and Bear Stearns. Now let me introduce Peter Lowry, CEO of Chronicle Software. Peter founded Chronicle in 2013. The company has become a trusted partner to many global Tier 1 banks and hedge funds. Chronicle open source software is used across multiple industries, ranging from payments, biometric research, and even gaming consoles. Prior to this, Peter has held many senior consultancy positions for global financial institutions, including RBS, Barclays, and UBS. Peter is a Java champion and one of the global leading experts in Java development, with the most answers on Stack Overflow. Moving on to today's event, Robert and Peter will discuss some of the challenges the FIX community faces before moving on to a quick overview of Chronicle and 3Forge. We will then turn our attention to our live demo. Over to you, Robert.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sarah, for that introduction. So first off, before we dive into the demo, we just wanted to talk a little bit about FIX and what the community faces. Obviously, it's a very established protocol at this point, and I think after decades of being in use, a few things have come up that really people focus on. It's not at this point so much about the protocol itself, but it's really the management aspect of it, which is the ability to manage lots of different sessions, to manage lots of different versions of protocols, managing sequence numbers, all of this stuff. Because especially on the buy side, you end up having lots and lots of different connections, and the question is, how do you keep all of those aligned, and how do you handle all of the different events that are taking place when sessions are going up and down, etc. The second thing is speed. Obviously, speed's a very important thing. That's why I think that's probably one of the reasons Chronicle's focused on this. Chronicle's known for their speed, and one of the nice things about the Chronicle library itself is the fact that it's giving you lots of latency numbers, so you can really monitor that speed very closely. We'll show that in the demo today. And then finally, integration. And integration's obviously becoming a ubiquitous problem throughout the industry, even regardless of FIX. I mean, it's just, how do you take all these different systems that are written in different languages by different teams with different philosophies, and how do you bring this together so that you have a cohesive sort of strategy, FIX strategy? Peter, maybe you could talk a little bit about what you've seen in the different asset classes with regard to FIX, kind of what the requirements are, and how you've seen this evolve with different languages, so on and so forth.
Sure. So initially, a lot of the automated trading was around equities, and it came out of the US in many ways. And at that time, C++ was really the language of choice. So you see, in particular, a lot of, even today, more of the trading systems are in C++ in the US than in Java compared to in the UK. But then over time, what happened was that they wanted to also automate FX, cash FX in particular. And when they came to doing that, FX didn't have quite as strict requirements for latency, but they did want to have short time to market and be able to add functionality very easily. So they're in a position to trade off a little bit of speed for time to market. Then over time, expectations have increased. Fixed income has become more automated as well. This has been going on. People with more proficiency in terms of delivering low latency code in Java has become more available. More libraries are available. We provide a number of open source libraries, but we're certainly not the only ones. And so you're seeing more low latency capabilities within Java. Because Java also has shorter time to market, and that was its advantage all along, being a higher level language, we've also started to see more equities systems now making use of Java for that purpose. They'll still use C++, but when it comes to the really low latency, they'll find that actually maybe FPGA is the answer. So when it comes to a general purpose programming language, as opposed to FPGA, the gap between Java and FPGA is narrowing as to where C++ still makes sense. Nevertheless, you still, from a geography point of view, you see relatively more C++ in the US, relatively more Java in UK and Europe.
Okay, great. Thank you. So with that said, Peter, why don't you give us a bit of an introduction on Chronicle and kind of what you focused on with the platform?
Originally, it was a consulting company for myself 7 years ago, and I started a number of open source libraries which are still available today and still actively maintained. And those open source libraries were partly to change the perception of Java and show that you really can do low latency, persisted, deterministic messaging in Java, and potentially outperform a lot of C++'s solutions that had been established. And that was why I started out producing only open source. More recently, in the last 3 years, we've shifted more of our revenue towards licensed products, but we still provide open source. And as you'll see, we get a lot of downloads for our open source. Also, over time, there's been a need to integrate with C++. And while the C++ is slightly faster, the main reason for using it is integration with the Java applications, as opposed to the speed, because the Java is very close.
Okay, some impressive stats here.
Yeah, so Chronicle Q is getting downloads of up to 12,000 in a month, which is quite a lot for a niche product. It's a bit specific. You need a specific need to use it, so it gets a lot of interest. Chronicle Map has always been a sort of companion product, and that's getting about 7,000 a month. But the one that's most relevant to this talk is Chronicle Q, because that's the storage medium, not only for our microservices, but Chronicle FIX itself. All of this session information is all persisted in Chronicle Qs, and that's what allows the FIX engine to both persist messages, do failover and high availability via using Q distribution, and yet still deliver low latencies.
Mm-hmm. So moving on.
So some of the things that Chronicle FIX do that are quite novel is that we have the high availability, we have lots of tools for ease of schema management, and initially it was just all about speed, then it was about high availability, but more recently as a company we've been thinking more about how to reduce time to market, how to make it easier for developers to say migrate from quick fix, how to make use of that data. And so one of the areas we haven't done is around monitoring and being able to see what's going on in your application. And that's where 3Forge come in.
Okay, great. Thank you. A little bit about 3Forge. So we were founded in 2010. Basically, what we've focused on is building out a platform where you can send in real-time streaming data, then that data can be made available through kind of a drag and drop interface. And in that interface, you can then view that real-time data. You also have the ability to query historical data. And then on top of that, you have the ability to then interact with that data. And by that, I mean be able to send messages back to the system. So those three components, the ability to ingest real-time streams, plus do static callbacks, plus do these user-solicited callbacks, is a perfect opportunity to work with this FIX gateway that Chronicle had built, because all three of those components are necessary in order to build a fully functional FIX monitoring and management tool. A few things worth noting. We're at several tier 1 banks, including Citi, Morgan Stanley, and Credit Suisse. So in terms of some statistics, our application's designed to ingest millions of messages per second. Reliability is something we're highly focused on because we are in these heavy use production installations at these tier 1 banks, so they rely on us, so we have a near 100% uptime. We have hundreds of adapters out of the box, including the Chronicle adapter, which is an important one for us because you saw they have 17 million downloads annually. So really having adapters is something we focus on. And then on top of that, really the idea is when you start building out these more complex use cases, for simple use cases, you don't need to write any code at all. You can just drag and drop and build that. And in fact, the demo you're going to see today is almost code-free. But then sometimes you do need to write special code to do very interesting pieces of functionality or particular user ergonomics. But generally what we see is the amount of code is around 5% of what you would end up building if you're building an application from scratch. So for the architecture for today, fairly straightforward. The idea is you have your FIX sessions. Those FIX sessions are then being connected. You have your external FIX sessions, which are being connected to and managed by the Chronicle FIX engine. The Chronicle FIX engine, using its queue interface, basically has the ability to publish messages out and receive user actions or administrative events. Basically, we've taken our platform and connected it to the FIX engine, implemented those APIs, and now through our front end, out of the box, you can basically manage the Chronicle FIX sessions, which is a nice thing to have because it really gives you a complete, these two pieces now gives you a complete solution for FIX. So let's see here. So I'm going to go ahead and start the demo now. I'm going to go ahead and log in here on Chrome. We can see that as I've logged in, now on the top here, we can basically see within this dashboard, the first thing is the Chronicle connections. So basically, we're running one Chronicle server. That Chronicle server has 3 connections on it. So it has client 1, client 2, and client 3. So the idea is if you had multiple Chronicle instances running maybe on different machines, then you would see multiple rows show up here. What we're really interested in, and usually the support is interested, is this FIX session view. So basically on the FIX session view, you can see all the things like we're getting current updates as to when we've received the last message, so you can see the time, obviously the session ID, and all the sort of vitals you'd expect. The last sequence number read and written, total number of messages received, total number of messages sent, and then FIX version, is the connection currently established, remote IP address, local IP address, so on and so forth. So this gives you a quick way to basically be able to monitor those sessions. All of this takes place in real time. So for example, if client 1 were to connect, when that takes place, basically you're going to see this line show up as connected. So in a bit, we'll simulate that. So I'll have someone in the lab basically start that up, and you'll see that changes. On top of that, I can go ahead, click on one of these rows. Yep, you can see they just started up. And so now this new guy comes in, total number of messages received. I can go ahead and click on that, new connection, and we can immediately start to get a profile of what those latencies looks like. That's probably when it connected, and now we can see that latency over time. So this would be 50 percentile latency, 90th, 99th, so on and so forth. So these messages are coming directly from the Chronicle queue. They're basically informing us of these latencies, and then we're reporting this here. You can manage sessions from here. So for example, I could right-click on a session and say, maybe I want to stop that session. Maybe I want to start or restart the session. I can go in, update those sequence numbers, go ahead and submit that, and then that would send it back to the Chronicle queue. Next, I could go ahead, if I double-click on a record, it's now going to bring in all the events for that particular FIX session. So that's a very nice thing to have from an admin standpoint. It's not like you have to go back to FIX logs or something like that. All that's now made available right through the dashboard. And then you could go ahead and search. So for example, I've clicked on this new session that came up. I'm going to go ahead and start searching. So let's go ahead, MS, and you can see that it's auto-completing. I'm going to just go ahead and say I want to find everything from Microsoft. There we go. So basically now we can see all the Microsoft orders show up within for that particular session, right? And of course, you can bounce around between sessions. Go ahead. Now I just want to see the Microsoft orders again. On top of that, we've done some work to basically extract some interesting fields, and I'll talk a little bit about how this can be customized. Everything's fully customizable. So here we've got the price for a particular symbol. So I could go ahead and say, I just want to see the price over time. We've just got a simulator that's generating prices. So you can basically see that price over time. And you can go ahead and add more interesting heuristics so that you can look and analyze these fixed messages in real time. I'll go into how this stuff is configured in a second here. From a usability standpoint, it has everything you're looking for out of the box, right? It basically can monitor your fixed sessions, and you can see what's up and down, what's going on, et cetera, et cetera. You can also see the raw fixed messages as they're streaming in, so you have that sort of fidelity when you need it to see what's going on, especially when you're doing the support calls with your users. And then you also have the latency aspect, and then on top of that, you can start to build custom tools to really start to diagnose and look at what kind of interesting information is in those fixed messages. For those that are not familiar with our product, basically this is what we call end user mode. So this is maybe what a support person would come in, and this is the tool they would see and the functionality they would have, the workflows they would have. But I have permission with this layout editor. So when I click this guy, it actually puts me in a mode where I can now start to configure the dashboard itself. So for example, let's say we wanted to go ahead and I want to add some more functionality to this. So I want to make it that when I click on a, I'm going to exit developer mode here and kind of clear this out just so we can get an idea. So now we've got all of our raw data again. And I'm going to go ahead and add a quick visualization here. So when I click on a record inside here, I can see I want to go ahead and query the security master and just bring in what we have from that security master. So I'm going to say add panel below. Now I've created some new real estate here. And then from here, I'm going to go ahead and use our data modeler to create a new table visualization. So the first thing is, this is our data modeler. It's really out of scope to talk about on this short webinar. The idea is you have your visualizations, you have your queries, you have your data sources, and I happen to have a data source called SecMaster that I want to connect to. So I'm going to go ahead and use that guy. I'm going to go and connect to our security master. There we go. Next, so this is now querying. It happens to be my SQL database. It could be any type of data source you have, including maybe it's being stored inside Chronicle somewhere. So that's it's basically the wizard's kind of giving us what it expects to run. I'm gonna go ahead and just create a simple table and hit finish. And now here's the interesting part. So this is data coming from the Chronicle queue. I wanna link that up to our security master. So I'm gonna click on this guy and basically say add a relationship. I could create a relationship between any of these panels. I'm gonna choose this guy here. And I'm gonna say I wanna take my source column symbol, matches, target, ticker. So that's going to be how we relate these two tables together. Say update that relationship. Now, when I click on Microsoft, it's bringing up all of the information for Microsoft there. So this is what we've got inside our security master. See all that sort of fun stuff. Click on Tesla. It's going to bring up the Tesla information. So basically, this is now linking those together. So really, the sky's the limit in terms of being able to connect this together. Also, imagine if you had fixed sessions coming in and you also had fixed sessions going out to the exchange, you could link those up. And so we've done that sort of work with a lot of our clients in the past. I know this is a very quick high-level overview of the product, but this gives you an idea of how we've basically taken our building blocks and our dashboard tooling and been able to basically build an interactive fixed session management tool on top of Chronicle.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. Feel free to send your questions or comments to sales@chronicle.software and at info@3forge.com. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Peter.